Georgia is a small mountainous country between the Black and the Caspian Seas. Its capital city is Tbilisi, Tbili meaning warm in the Georgian language. That particular word can be employed in reference to both the city's hot springs and the warm, hospitable nature of its people. It is a country rich in vegetation, monuments, and culture. Mrs. Eleni is the oldest person in the city of Teta. Mrs. Eleni had a very hard, strenuous life. She worked very much and slept little, about 6 hours a day, excluding periods of day rest between work. She ate well, and her diet included mazzoni, dairy products, and walnuts. She is deeply religious. The death of her daughter and some grandchildren in a car crash some years ago has taken away most of her will to live. However, she lives with her son and his family and does light work around the house and the yard, such as sweeping. These days her joints ache, but before she felt well. Hebibe Tuchlatse lives with her family in a village in the Ajarian Hills. She is 102 years old, and although there are old people in her family, none have reached her age. Most died when they were about 90. She worked 265 days a year in the kolkhoz, and the rest of the time spent working on her own plot of land and her house. Ever since the death of her husband in 1941, she was forbidden by Muslim law to leave her land, and thus concentrated on building her house, a magnificent 3-story building. She is a Muslim, although she has chosen to christen her children. Every morning she engages in a series of exercises. Her diet included a bit of everything, but especially matzoni, dairy products, nuts and vegetables, most of which were homemade and grown. She feels very well, but she contracted pneumonia last year, and ever since then her knees ache, which hampers her ability to work in her house and garden.
This is natural honey, and that's natural nuts, and this is us trying to gain some years.
Pati Takidze lives in an upper Ajarian village with her family. She cannot know her exact age, but by counting generations, she determines that she is between 104 and 108 years old. All her life, she worked at tea picking, and these days continues to work in the house and garden, especially weeding and planting. She feels well, and her hearing and eyesight are also good, and has never been sick. As for food, she ate everything, all organic and most homegrown and made. She is not a person given to nervous worry, but takes life as it comes. She is satisfied with her past life. She believes in God and knows both faiths, Christian and Muslim. She also prays in both and has raised her children to know both religions. She likes the youth and would like people to work hard and not harm others. She believes in the need and the power of democracy.
It is good to have influential friends in this business of searching for centenarians. As you can see, the police have been engaged, and so has been a bus stop to search it for old people. The people here are incredibly polite, and they're very helpful to even complete strangers, which we are in this part of Ajaria. The address of a centenarian who's about 112 is currently in the making. That down there is a remarkable bridge because it's quite old. It's from 12th century, and it's one of the 3 of its kind remaining in the world, built by Queen Tamara during her rule. Another interesting thing is that just above and side by side with 12th century technology is the 20th century technology. How's that for brotherhood of time?
Mary Galublishvili has worked throughout her life, at home, in the garden, and the kolkhoz. Her diet contained everything, but was especially rich in matzoni, dairy products, and nuts. She feels well, although her hearing is going. She also recently broke her wrist, and the healed joint is not as good as it used to be. She's happy with her life, and also with the happenings in Georgia today. Mamiya Zodia lives in Upper Ajaria with his many descendants. He worked until his 87th year as the engineer of agronomy in the kolkhoz. He worked hard and a lot throughout his life. In fact, he believes it to be one of the factors to which he attributes his old age. Mr. Zodia is not the only member of his family to live an impressive amount of years. He claims that the majority of his ancestors lived to be over 90. His diet lacked nothing. He ate meat, but also all kinds of dairy products, walnuts, and homemade honey. He is religious and unafraid of the future. He believes democracy to be superior to communism, and also likes the young people today. His only bone of contention with today's youth is that it doesn't understand the power and the necessity of effort and hard work. Overall, he is satisfied with his life. Anna Chachadze resides in the mountains with her close family. She has led a strenuous life, working in the manufacture of silk. Although she ate everything, her favorite dishes are matsoni and walnuts. She has been recently ill and has not worked since. There were no centenarians in her family. She is religious. Mrs. Chachadze is not very interested in politics or the future and expresses a strong nostalgia for the old days. She also largely disapproves of today's youth. Herife Semnidze lives in the Ajarian mountains with her family. She feels well, has no pains, and her eyesight is also good, which she attributes to the fact that she never watched television. She suffers periods of weakness, the remainder of last winter's bad flu. Although she stopped working in the collective as a tobacco picker 8 years previously, she still does light work around the house, including sweeping and sewing. Throughout her life, she worked a lot in the hills and mountains. Most of her relatives were long-lived too, living to be over 90. Since the early death of her husband, she concentrated on raising her 8 children, building her house, and working in the kolkhoz. Her diet, based on homegrown organic foods and clean water, contained everything, including meat, dairy products, honey, and walnuts. She is religious and believes in life after death. She only stopped praying a couple of years ago because she found the Muslim prayers physically taxing. She is optimistic, lacks nervous tension, and takes life's problems as they come. She is very satisfied with her life.
We are currently on the seaside, still in Kabuleti. The noise of the waves behind you may give you a clue, but just in case we haven't, we're still on the seaside. And this is traditional pot cleaning with sand. Cows crossing the road the same time as us.
Georgia is the land of the emancipated cow. Here, the cows wander freely around the cities and villages, feasting in meadows, tea fields, and parks. Sometimes they behave with the superiority one might come to associate with their sacred Indian cousins. The Georgian cows have developed a system for getting rid of flies, They stand still while cars pass them by, and the noise of the traffic scares away the annoying insects. The only fault of this invention being when the cow parks itself in the middle of a narrow mountain road, and the only alternative to beefsteak being to drive off the road and into the abyss. Although they are smaller and give less milk than the western cows, the milk of the Georgian cows is healthier, and from it is made the famous mazzoni, a product highly favored among the centenarians. Maria Ivanovna moved from Tbilisi to a town in the region of Guria a year ago, and lives there with some of her relatives. She taught Russian in Tbilisi and worked in the school for many hours a day. She slept about 6 hours at night, excluding periods of day rest. She continued this mode of life well into her 80s. She has no centenarians in her close family and has never been sick. These days, she still feels well. She does light work around the house and then reads or rests. Although she occasionally drank a glass of alcohol at family gatherings, she has never smoked. Her diet contained very little meat, for she preferred dairy products, vegetables, and nuts. She is religious and strongly believes in God. She also believes that these days life is better than in the past. Overall, she is satisfied with her life. Babu Maharadze resides with his family high in the mountains of Pajaria. Although he is the oldest person in the region, there are many centenarians in his village. Up until 3 years ago, he worked as a blacksmith. He was never ill in his life, except for last winter, and has felt quite weak since. Now he works around the house, only infrequently. His eyesight is still fair, but his hearing left him 2 years ago. He studied in the Georgian school and speaks 2 languages, Georgian and Turkish. He ate a variety of foods, but was especially fond of all dairy products. He never smoked or drank alcohol. Throughout his life, taking good care of himself and conserving his health had always been important to him. He is not a person given to anger or nervous worry. Instead, has always wished everybody well. He is very satisfied with his life. We are in the house of the oldest person in this region. He doesn't look it, but he is around 120 years old and has been kind enough to agree to talk to us about his life and his predictions. I'll clarify that later. And with the typical Georgian hospitality, while we were interviewing the great-great-grandfather, the family made us some wonderful lunch. Although the sign up there might give you a clue, for those who can't read Cyrillic or Georgian, this tiny, miserable-looking house is the place where Stalin was born. And now around the house, there is the park.
Over here we have examples of Georgian pottery. Those down there are actually wine cups, and the kind that you cannot put down, so that when you drink wine out of them you have to drink it in one go. Over there are actually a kind of clay fridge, because there you can keep things such as the dairy products for quite a long time, whereas outside they could have spoiled quickly. That funny looking thing is the flour mill, and it works, you can see. It's powered by water.
Bagrat Demosadze was born in the village of Apnia, but has since moved into the region of Fadzia with some of his family. These days he maintains the house and works in his grape garden, which he built from nothing with his own 2 hands. He believes work and effort to be crucial to long life. He gets up very early and sleeps about 6 to 7 hours a day. His diet contained completely organic foods, dairy products, walnuts, many vegetables, but not much meat. He's not a smoker or a drinker, for he believes drinking to be very bad for health. There were many centenarians in both his family and his old village. In Apnia, it was considered shameful to die before one turned 100. His health is exemplary. His only illness was due to a war wound. He has all his teeth, good hearing, and eyesight. He is religious as well as an optimist. Mr. Demosadze likes people in general, and children in particular. He doesn't get either nervous or angry. He also likes today's youth, although he thinks that the youth should take better care of itself. Bagrat Demosadze is happy with his life. Misha de la Beridze has moved to Tbilisi 25 years ago and has lived here since with his family. In his youth, he worked very much, almost tirelessly in the Soviet Union during its industrialization. He continued this strenuous lifestyle into his 60s. Then he started taking very good care of his health. He never smoked and stopped drinking when he ascertained that it was harming his health. These days he feels well and spends his time reading and caring for plants that he grows on the balcony. He also rests quite a lot and sleeps up to 10 hours a day. His diet contained everything. A lot of dairy products, but little meat. He is not at all religious. Mr. de la Beridze is quite optimistic and unafraid of the future. Overall, he is satisfied with his life. Alexander Vladishvili was born in the mountains of the North Caucasus. He has since moved to Tbilisi, where he now lives with his family. He worked very much throughout his life, and his job as an engineer left him little time for sleep and rest. His diet was rich. He liked everything and ate both meat and dairy products. All his life he practiced sports, and these days he still engages in a series of exercises each morning. He didn't smoke and is not a heavy drinker, though he likes a glass of alcohol now and again. He is optimistic and spends his days reading and writing his memoirs. He is quite religious. He is also satisfied with his life, although he feels a certain nostalgia for communism and the past days.
What did you show?
Besides being one of the most beautiful parts of Georgia, Abkhazia was also the region the richest in centenarians. Unfortunately, ethnic disputes erupted there, and the Abkhazi Georgians were forced to leave their homes and flee for their lives. Thus, my intended area of research had become a war zone. As to the centenarians who had resided there, the vast majority didn't make it out of Abkhazia, and of those who did, most perished while crossing the mountains. The refugees which arrived into the war-free parts of Georgia were then placed into hotels all over the country. The sad truth being that there were too many refugees and too few hotels. Their living standards suffered as a result, with whole families cramped into a couple of rooms. Tbilisi's Hoteliveria is no exception, and today it is a sad remnant of one of the town's best hotels. The Abkhazi elder we talked to in Iveria is not a centenarian. Nonetheless, she was able to tell us about the centenarians which lived in her village and their way of life. The Abkhazi elder told us that the way of life in the villages was healthy but archaic, with no electricity or running water. The villagers had to work very hard, but in return, there was an abundance of everything. Their diet contained many vegetables and fruits, as well as dairy products, but less meat. She said that often journalists came to their village and published fantastic tales of people 140 or older, but she denied the existence of such elders. Although Abkhazia produced no modern Methuselims, it was usual for a villager to live to be up to 100, but very few lived to be 120. Illnesses were extremely rare, and serious ones such as cancer unheard of. Work played a central part in the lifestyle of the villagers. Everybody labored their entire life, and even the centenarians were expected to do their share of jobs. Almost nobody died from disease. Instead, they would simply lie down to sleep or rest and never wake up again. Lucky them. Christianity came to Georgia in the first half of the 4th century AD. It was Saint Nino, the patron saint of Georgians, who brought the word of Christ to the Caucasus. When she came, she made a cross from 2 pieces of grape vine tied with her hair. Hence comes the special shape of the Georgian cross. The horizontal piece is bent downwards to symbolize the curved grapevine. Another legacy of Christianity's early arrival to Georgia are its many beautiful churches, some of which are also very old. The Samtavra Cathedral was built on the 4th century site of Georgia's oldest wooden church. The Jvari Church was first built in the 6th century, and the Svetishkoveli Cathedral of Mtsketa, the burial place of the Georgian kings, stems from the 11th century. Along with the churches and other religious monuments comes a wealth of frescoes and icons, excluding Jesus Christ, the Virgin Mary, and the Apostles. The most often depicted are Saint Nino and Saint George. When one talks about religion in Georgia, a phenomenon which cannot go unmentioned is religious tolerance, especially evident in Tbilisi, where all the places of worship, Muslim, Jewish, Orthodox, Armenian, and others, coexist peacefully, despite differing religious persuasions of their respective members. The Caucasus. The Caucasus, coming from the Sanskrit word White Hills, is a chain of mountains which forms the natural boundary between Europe and Asia. Among its many peaks is Mount Elbrus, the highest in Europe, and not Mont Blanc, as is wrongly supposed. The Caucasus Mountains, whose pristine white peaks belie a history of bloodshed, cover most of the Georgian territory. Of old, what is now Georgia, was known as Colchis, an almost magical land of lush green valleys and snow-capped mountains that has its place in Greek myths. When Prometheus defied the will of the Olympus gods in order to help humans, the angry god Zeus, as a punishment, chained him to the Caucasus and sent each day the eagle to peck the liver of the helpless Titan. Because each night Prometheus healed, his tortures were meant to be endless and continued until he wished for the death denied him. Fleeing from the wrath of the jealous goddess Hera, Ea came to the Caucasus. Later, so too, did her descendant Heracles. While passing through the Caucasus, he shot down the eagle which was torturing Prometheus. The legendary heroes, the Argonauts, arrived at the foot of the Caucasus in search of the Golden Fleece. There, the Argonauts met Medea, whose passion, jealousy, and volatile disposition are only too typical of the fiery-tempered Georgians. The association of the Caucasus and literature does not end with Greek myths. Those mountains have been a constant inspiration to great Russian writers such as Tolstoy, Lermontov, Pushkin, and Griboyedov. Today, the Caucasus still has the appeal which captures so many people. Its snow-covered peaks which stand tall and unconquerable, deafening to the seasons, fascinate and enchant as much as ever. Lovers of winter sports enjoy the opportunities for skiing. The peaks are a challenge to mountain climbers, and the Caucasus, with the unspoiled beauty of its wilderness, is the place for nature lovers. No one who has seen the Caucasus can forget its spell, and one who hasn't seen it remains a wonderful experience for us. There have always been centenarians. Evidence of them exists even in the Egyptian papyruses. The only thing that changed is their multitude. Improvements in medicine, living conditions, and the fall in the natality rate have all contributed to a boom in the numbers of centenarians living in developed countries. However, Georgia has always been rich in centenarians, regardless of industrialization. Centenarians exist in towns and villages, among both men and women of all social classes. Once more, the only difference is in numbers. The majority of centenarians are uneducated. There are twice as many among the female half of the population, and they seem to flourish on altitudes of 500 to 1,800 meters above sea level. There are only a few old-age homes in all of Georgia, and these are intended for foreigners or old people who require medical care. In 99.9% of cases, centenarians live with their families, which is considered to be an important factor in their having reached such an impressive age. Therefore, your best chances of being a centenarian are if you are an uneducated peasant woman living in the hills. Sorry, businessman. The Georgian centenarians seem to have found what the Mesopotamian king Gilgamesh and the alchemists have searched for, a way of preserving their youth when they grow old. Upon reaching a venerable age, they still have conserved sight and hearing, their own teeth, and the ability to work. They have no magic potion, only a certain way of living. Their elixir of youth comes from lack of stress and nervous worry, a healthy, plentiful diet, work, rest, and exercise, all in all a balanced life, suited to their personal internal rhythm. Important components of their diet are fruit and vegetables, nuts and nut oil, natural sources of vitamin E, which is an important factor in preventing the aging. Also, they consume large quantities of mazzoni, a dairy product which is a cross between yogurt and sour milk. However, psychological factors play an important role too. Centenarians are people satisfied with their lives, regardless of whether they were tea pickers or famous ministers. As elders, they are respected and live with their families, surrounded by love and generations of descendants. Also, centenarians have clean consciences, which enables them to sleep well and reduce stress. Science confirms the words of the Georgian centenarians. Man is made to live around 120 years. Man is meant to live about 120 years, in the opinion of gerontologists. Scientists have discovered that we come into this world with 13 billion neurons, or nerve cells. Every day we spend about 150,000 neurons, which means that if we haven't increased our spending needlessly by smoking, drinking, stress, insomnia, overwork, by the time we're 70, we would have close to 10 billion neurons left. As the Chinese saying goes, we age at the speed that we live. Aging begins the moment of our conceptions, and not the day that we look in the mirror and don't like what we see. Recently, Jeanne Calment, the oldest woman in the world, passed away. However, to the Georgian gerontologists, that is not sensational. They point out that she was blind, deaf, and almost immobile, her existence artificially prolonged by doctors and medicine. The Georgian centenarians, on the other hand, are active, fully aware members of the society, who not only see and hear, but also take part in work. Instead of merely existing, they live. Quoting the words of the gerontologists, we should not try to add years to our life, but life to our years. By leading a balanced lifestyle, with a diet which contains many vegetables, fruits and dairy products, but less milk, we would lengthen our lifespan. However, the blessing of smog-free air and organic food is not available to everybody. Nonetheless, by exercising and reducing stress, taking care of our bodies, and starting each day with a spoonful of honey and nuts, we might gain who knows how many more healthier years. Georgia is the magically beautiful country of warm and hospitable people, and it's perfectly clear why those that live in it want to enjoy it as long as they can. It is not surprising either that according to the UN facts, that the greatest number of people who commit suicide because of homesickness are Georgian. This is what is known as a tree of imagination. One is meant to make a wish, and by tying a piece of cloth around a branch, the wish is supposed to come true. Well, my wish is to visit Georgia again, so I certainly hope that the tree system works.
Okay, gathered here are some of the wonderful people I'd like to take the opportunity to thank, because if it hadn't been for them, A, we wouldn't have found our centenarians, B, we wouldn't have got to our centenarians, and C, we wouldn't have understood our centenarians. So, thank you, people. Didi Matova.
Didi